asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Well. Guess who just breezed in the door? Yulia Skripal. Hey? Yulia Skripal has surfaced and has said that she feels lucky to have survived being poisoned and that she would one day like to return home to her native Russia. Ms. Skripal, who was poisoned in March in Salisbury, I'm reading now from Sky and from the BBC. I'm not sure she was poisoned. I know you're not sure that she was poisoned. But anyway, we'll just go along with the narrative for the moment. She said, "We are so lucky to have both survived this attempted assassination. Our recovery has been slow and extremely painful." This is Sky News at 6 p.m. British summertime today, breaking the story.
Hello, good evening. Yulia Skripal has spoken on camera for the first time since she and her father survived a nerve agent attack in Salisbury. She's described her recovery as slow and painful. She's rejected the Russian embassy's offer of assistance, but says she does want to return to Moscow.
Добрый день. Меня зовут Юлия Скрипаль. Я приехала в Великобританию 3 марта навестить своего отца, как я и делала ранее.
Good day. My name is Yulia Skripal. I came to the UK on March 3rd to visit my father, something I've done before. After 20 days in a coma, I woke to the news that we may have been poisoned. I still find it difficult to come to terms with the fact that both of us were attacked in such a way. The fact that a nerve agent was used to do this is shocking. We are so lucky to have both survived this attempted assassination. I don't want to describe the details, but the clinical treatment was invasive, painful and depressing. Our recovery has been slow and extremely painful. I am grateful to all of the wonderful, kind staff at Salisbury Hospital, a place I have become all too familiar with. I also think fondly of those who helped us on the street on the day of the attack. I was discharged from hospital on April 9th and continued to progress with treatment, but my life has been turned upside down. As I try to come to terms with the devastating changes thrust upon me, both physically and emotionally, I take one day at a time and want to help care for my father until his full recovery. In the longer term, I hope to return home to my own country. I wish to address a couple of issues directly and have chosen to interrupt my rehabilitation to make this short statement. I ask that everyone respects the privacy of me and my father. We need time to recover and come to terms with everything that has happened. I'm grateful for the offers of assistance from the Russian embassy, but at the moment, I do not wish to avail myself of their services. Also, I want to reiterate what I said in my earlier statement, that no one speaks for me or my father but ourselves. I would like to thank again everyone involved in my continued care in this difficult period of my life. My priority remains on my recovery and my father's health. Thank you for your attention.
Well, how interesting. Apparently she was filmed somewhere near London. Very nice, pretty, scenic area. Wooded area, I would say. She looks the picture of health, does Yulia. She's an attractive woman. She speaks there very well. Looks, as I said, very well. You know, the picture of health, as I said. Presumably, this footage has been presented to the UK's media by those who are allegedly protecting the Skripals. This is all very interesting. Of course, Alexander Yakovenko, who's Russia's ambassador to the UK, he's been playing a game of poker with the British authorities, demanding to see some evidence that the Skripals are okay. He even suggested the whole thing was a hoax, that they were never poisoned. He raised the British authorities. Well, it seems that they have seen his raise and they have raised again with this video. Now, undoubtedly, there will be listeners to this programme and listeners to other independent media productions who will say this is all fake, it's all staged, the usual stuff. They might be right, who knows? I just get tired of it. It's not real bullshit. We don't know. Anyway, presuming just for the minute that that it's a genuine statement from Yulia, Mark White is a Sky News UK affairs correspondent. Here's his take on Yulia's video and what she had to say.
Yeah, it's a very significant development because it is effectively a proof of life video. The authorities here in the UK, the Skripals themselves, of course, more than aware of the growing speculation that there has been pushed, of course, forward by the likes of the Russian embassy on whether they were actually poisoned in the first place, whether they may even be alive. So that was part of the motivation behind this statement that Yulia Skripal has given. She has given a statement to show that she is alive, she is recovering, but she has been through a terrible ordeal, as has her father. And she wants to make it clear to people that her first priority is to look after her father. She will be staying here in the UK. This is an undisclosed location where Yulia Skripal and her father are being kept under police guard. Of course, they have been the subject of an attempted assassination plot here. You can see Yulia Skripal signing 2 letters, one in English and one in Russia, effectively just outlining the statement that she gave to camera there. But the main points of that, apart from the very important point of her being able to show people that she is alive and now recovering, is to say that she one day hopes to return to Russia. But in the meantime, she is rejecting any kinds of call for assistance from the Russian embassy. She says that she is happy, she has been looked after well by the UK authorities and will not avail herself of any help from the Russian government at this stage. But at one time, she says, at some point in the future, she will be looking to return to her home country of Russia.
Now, Mark White there, correspondent, there are tweets on this. Andy Newman tweets, I wonder who Yulia's handlers are. Base Ninja tweets, poisoned or attacked by a nerve agent? Which was it? For me, tweets Base Ninja, I wouldn't describe the use of military-grade nerve agents as poison, more like weapons of mass destruction. You know what, guys? I think that whole story fell apart within a few days of it emerging. The Skripals were not poisoned or were not attacked with a nerve agent by agents of the Russian state. It's just not true. It's a nonsense. I think we all agree on that. Now, that whole story has fallen to pieces. Patsy Cline, anyone? Fall to pieces. David Stanford tweets, afternoon or good evening, David. Isn't it wonderful when you only have the words of a lamestream employee translator? That's a good point. Yulia Skripal has been in the country for a number of years now, has lived here, worked here. Why wouldn't she be speaking in English, knowing that she's addressing a UK audience? It might be something of nothing. It's just something that occurred to me 15 minutes past the hour. By the way, Charlie Robinson will be joining me. He'll be joining me at the top of the hour. Good stuff. Looking forward to that. Charlie Robinson at the top of the hour. He's got a terrific book out that we want to talk about. Keep the tweets coming in. It's at Richie Allen Show on Twitter. Dean tweets, what happened to the bloke the bloke or the reporter who said they should be left to die in peace? This story just has too many anomalies. That's right. It was reported right across the board that they weren't likely to live, and one of Sergei Skripal's closest friends, allegedly, was telling Sky News that his understanding was that Skripal wouldn't survive. He was released on the day that that couple got married on Saturday, that national nonsense on Saturday. A lot of people said, well, what a great time to release him even from hospital, because it would just go unnoticed. It was nicely covered by the royal wedding. 16 minutes past the hour. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take a very quick break, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about Friday's abortion referendum in the Republic of Ireland. I'd always planned on doing something on it this week. I hadn't spoken much about it before now. Maria Heller and I spoke a bit about it a week or so ago, but I want to chat about it because it's very interesting. How it is being reported on is very interesting. What is being said in my country is very interesting as well. It's hugely emotive. I've had emails from people. I had an email from one woman particularly who said that she was disgusted by me as in your host, that I would be in favour of abortion, that I should know all about depopulation agendas and all of that. I've never said on this programme, ever, or anywhere else, that I am in favour of abortion. Ever. So if I have, I'd like somebody to point me in the direction of a piece of audio that proves that. I've never said that at all. I'll tell you where I am on it when I come back. You might find that interesting, you might not. But before that, we're going to hear from some people, and I'm going to explain exactly what is going on in Ireland, just in case you don't know. This is your Richie Allen Show for Wednesday, the 23rd of May, Red Letter Day in my life. Happy 40th birthday to the future Mrs. Allen, to my life partner, my fiance. I'm not going to say that again. Back in a minute with more on the abortion referendum. The pending referendum in Ireland takes place on Friday.
There's a place high in the mountains of Spain, a sanctuary where souls gather from all around the globe to learn about themselves and experience powerful changes in the way we see our world. They become awakened to their gifts and their power to heal others. Become part of this ever-growing worldwide family of unique, pure energy healing practitioners. Discover how amazing you truly are. Go to www.markbayerski.com. It could just change your life forever.
Introducing the H2O app, a powerful water structuring application that programs vibrational energies into water through the use of different sound frequencies. Once programmed, the use of water for drinking, cooking, bathing. Give it to your friends and colleagues or spread it around the garden. The list goes on. It's not just water that the app can be used for either. It's great for programming crystals too. The H2O app is free to download and is available on both Android and Apple platforms. For further information, go to h2oapp.online.
Have you lost access to important data from a computer hard drive, mobile phone, or other storage device? Maybe you have a broken hard drive containing years of information, or a smartphone that no longer works from which you'd like the pictures, movies, and chats recovered. If you would like to recover data from any type of digital device, including desktop and laptop computers, external hard drives, cameras, smartphones, NAS, and RAID servers, then contact Data Clinic today at dataclinic.co.uk now.
Richie Allen.
Welcome back to the programme. Welcome back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. Thanks for joining me. Hope you've had a good day. Hope you're in good form. If you're in the UK, you've enjoyed some absolutely beautiful spring weather. It really is lovely. If it could just be like this. Manchester is one of the greatest places you could ever spend time. One of the warmest in terms of the care and the time that people have for one another. It's amazing. It's like nowhere else I've ever been. And I've been lucky enough in my life to travel all over the world. All over the world. Central America, North America, Africa, Europe. I've seen everywhere. There's nothing like this great city. If you could just get 4 to 6 weeks between June and September every year, like they do in Central Europe, you'd love it. You'd never leave it, is what I'm saying. Dean apologises for his last tweet. Thanks, Dean. It was garbage. Apology. It was grammatically awful with terrible spelling, says Dean. Get back to school. Don't go back to school. There's an app now, isn't there? There's an app for everything, you know. We're dumbing down to the point that in a few years' time, not preschoolers, in a few years' time, teenagers will be absolutely, totally and utterly illiterate. We're dumbing down so much. There's an app now where you can just write like a fucktard. You can write like a fucktard and then run the app over it and it'll clean it all up for you, turn you into Stephen King. Right? That's just wonderful, isn't it? Oh, God. Do you know what? I never brag about my education because it doesn't mean anything. It's rubbish. My education was a waste of time because it was just programming and indoctrination. It was. However, antiquated skills like reading, writing, like grammar, like context, like... Christ. I mean, it's dreadful to think where we're going to be in a few years' time, you know. Right. Move on. That actually depresses me, so I'm going to just move straight on. There is a big referendum in the Republic of Ireland this coming Friday. I've been sent a story there from WLRFM.com, my old stomping ground, Waterford's radio station and one of the most successful commercial stations in the country. 2 people have been arrested there, apparently, over the anti-abortion referendum. Presumably, they were posting materials that somebody found offensive. I've not got time to read the story now, so I better just crack on. Time is pressing. Thanks to Mr. Mojo for the story anyway. So Irish people on Friday will get the chance to vote on whether they want to keep the law that makes abortion illegal or if they want to repeal it, the 8th Amendment. Now, Ireland, in case you don't know, has a near total ban on abortion. Terminations, as it stands in Ireland, are only allowed if there is a substantial risk to the life of the mum. And there is a penalty for accessing an illegal abortion. That penalty is 14 years in prison. That's the maximum. Women travel to the UK for a termination. And I think there's about 9 a day, I think. Is it 9 a day or is it 9 a week? It could be 9 a week, maybe not 9 a day, maybe 9 a week. I'll try and get that stat right. Maybe it's 9 a week. 9 women a week travel to the UK for a termination. As I said, the law is rooted in the 8th Amendment to the Republic of Ireland's Constitution, giving that amendment, by the way, gives the unborn child the same right to life as the mother. Voters will choose yes if they want to repeal this amendment or no if they want to keep it as it is. So the Irish government has proposed that if people do vote to repeal the 8th Amendment, women could access a termination within the first 12 weeks of pregnancy. Now, that's been hugely, hugely controversial, and it's been contentious, to say the least, in my homeland. People are saying abortion on demand, and that's a phrase, abortion on demand, that's entered the Irish lexicon. It really has. Many who are voting no cite abortion on demand as something they can't support in good conscience. So let's hear a couple of the arguments then. And I'm going to say again, I'm a lot of things. I have a lot of faults. There are things about me which are annoying. I'm well aware of that, like anybody else. But I am rigidly fair. I am the fairest person that I can possibly be. And I'm going to commend Sky News for their coverage of this issue in the Republic of Ireland. It has been outstanding, particularly a woman called Beth Rigby, who's a roving reporter. She would be known, I suppose, as a hack, which is not a derogatory term either, by the way. She's a very seasoned reporter. Brilliant reporting by Beth Rigby on this. So we're going to hear a couple of the arguments. We're first of all going to hear from Amy Callahan and her husband. Now, Amy learned very early in her pregnancy that her baby had a condition that meant he effectively had no brain. There was no prospect of life for him. He was going to die upon delivery. There was no doubt about it. She ended up going to the UK for a termination. And you'll hear from Amy, as I said, and also her husband here.
Your first minute of that scan, or your first second, was joy. Like, you know, you see the little blob and you hear the heartbeat. You know it's there. And then I just knew. I knew when she was quiet, when she said nothing, and when she said, "Is your husband here?" I just thought, this isn't good news.
Last year, Amy and Connor were expecting their second child, but at the 12-week scan, their unborn baby Nico was diagnosed with a fatal condition called anencephaly, which affects the baby's brain and skull.
She said that it was likely the baby would pass away in utero, that some babies then do go full term, and if they do go full term and you give birth, they're likely to die while you're giving birth, and that if the baby didn't die while you give birth, it was going to be a few minutes, maybe an hour or two. And I started to think at that stage that that was not a kind way for a baby to die. And I was thinking about myself and having to spend the next 6 months pregnant with people asking me how far along I was. Before all this happened, I would have known that abortion was illegal here, that in most cases. But I thought in a case where it was this severe, where there really wasn't a brain, where a baby was missing most of its brain, and where the amniotic fluid would be wearing the brain down until she died, I really thought they could help more.
I was angry, but I didn't know where to target it, because even, in Ireland, the Irish doctors and nurses, they're totally hamstrung by the law. Even if they wanted to help, helping us comes with a 14-year jail sentence, which is crazy. Why should a medical issue come with essentially a jail sentence hanging over it?
Yeah, that's a pretty heartfelt story there. Again, can't imagine it. Can't imagine it, really. We haven't been blessed with children. We love children. But to be told in pregnancy that there's no chance of life, and that the condition which resulted in the skull deformity and the brain being absent, it must be a terrible thing. So they took the decision to go to the UK, because if anybody had assisted them in the Republic of Ireland, as they said, it could have resulted in a jail sentence. So just think on that. We'll now hear from Vicky Wall. Now, Vicky was in a very similar situation to Amy. Vicky was told that her child wouldn't live. Very similar condition, very similar congenital condition. But Vicky explains why she carried on with the pregnancy and why she is very much against abortion. Here's Vicky Wall.
Save the 8th campaigner Vicky Wall's baby was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder, Edwards syndrome, at 23 weeks.
I think he knew by my face that abortion would not be an option for us. Wouldn't be our right to abort her. She was unique, and she was a daughter, and she was valued to us.
Vicky continued with her pregnancy, but her baby died at 32 weeks.
Liaden died at home, surrounded by her family, and with love and with care, and most of all with dignity. And I take a massive comfort in that she died on her terms.
We've talked about your really difficult choice that you made. Do you feel comfortable in making that choice for other women, rather than letting them make that choice for themselves?
Well, we have to look at what the choice entails. What are we saying we have the choice to do? We're looking to have the choice to end a unique human life. And I don't think that choice is a reasonable choice. Bottom line on it would be that I am extremely pro-life, and I think life should be protected.
Vicky Wall there, and Beth Rigby, the reporter I mentioned. It was Beth speaking with her there. I really like Beth Rigby. I think she's an excellent reporter. So you have two very articulate, very nice women there who took two different approaches. And again, keep in mind what they said. Now here's a very interesting chat between Sky News presenter Kay Burley, often mentioned on this programme, and a man called John McGurk. Now John is the communications director of the Save the 8th campaign. So he's a no campaigner. Pro-life he is. This is very good stuff, this. Again, I give credit where credit is due. This exchange between John McGurk and Kay Burley reminds you, well, it reminds me anyway, of the way news used to be. It's grown up. It's interesting. It's deep. It's thought-provoking. So John McGurk, communications director of Save the 8th, he votes no on Friday, will vote no, and he's pro-life. Here he is talking with Sky News' Kay Burley. And he first of all talks about some of the issues that the UK has with abortion. Very good stuff.
We're very happy that over the last 20 years the number of abortions in this country has plummeted from about 6,500 women travelling to the UK for an abortion in 2001 to about 3,500 today. Now some of that the Yes campaign will point out is in relation to illegal abortion pills, but they account, their best estimate is about 1,500. So we've seen about a 20 to 25% drop in the number of women making that awful and heart-wrenching decision in the last 15-20 years, and we want to continue that progress. We don't want, with all respect to you, because I'm a huge fan of the UK, but we don't want want to import the culture that you guys have over there.
Which is,
you know, in 1 year you had 66 babies born after an abortion left to die on a table, and that was 2007. In 1 year last year in the UK, you had 11 babies injected into the heart and delivered dead because they had a cleft palate. You had 141 children injected into the heart and delivered dead because they were twins and their mothers only wanted one child. And the most horrifying thing about those stories for me, Kay, isn't that they happened. It's that they weren't news at all. That the British public...
Very emotive words, aren't they? And then if I came back to you and said, what about a 12-year-old girl that is raped and then has to undergo the whole 9 months of her pregnancy, and then what happens to her and what happens to her baby?
And you know, this is why it's an emotive issue. And those cases do happen. There were 3 of them out of 3,500 women who have been raped in 2016 who travelled to the UK. And I think if this was a referendum of making provision for those women, we would lose it. And we would lose it comprehensively. But it's not. This is a referendum that has very shamelessly exploited the horrible fate that those women and women with tragic diagnoses in relation to their children have, and used their cases to try and bulldoze in a regime that's as similar, if not more liberal, than the one in the UK.
Okay, let's put that to one side. If you win the campaign on Friday into Saturday, what would you see happen as far as women travelling to the United Kingdom for illegal abortions, illegal here, not there, are concerned? Would you have them not be prevented from travelling?
No, I mean, the law as it stands, we are not voting on changing the law as it stands to make it more restrictive. We're changing to make it more liberal, and we oppose that. We have no desire to prevent the right guaranteed by our European Union membership to travel to any other state for any other reason.
So you would still be content with women travelling overseas to have an abortion?
Being content with people travelling to do things that are illegal in other countries. Yeah, and trying to prevent them from doing it are two very different things in a democracy. In Western liberal democracies, we don't build walls to keep people in. We don't do that, and nor should we.
That's very good stuff, that. And he said something very interesting to Kay Birdie there. He said that if the referendum was about those 3 cases where women were raped and became pregnant, but then they had to travel to the UK to have a termination, if the referendum was about that, the pro-life the pro-life vote no campaign would lose comprehensively. He's pro-life, he's voting no on Friday. But if he said it's about rape, if it was about rape and the right to terminate if you've been raped or abused, they would lose. And again, I want you to keep that in mind, because speaking to my friend and colleague Jean-Anne Crowley, who's in Ireland and who will be voting on this on Friday, I didn't ask her which way she would be voting because it's none of my business. We talked about how this incredibly complicated issue has been tackled by the Irish government in the same ridiculous kind of ham-fisted way that I suppose most governments try to handle these issues. It's in a black and white way when things are not black and white. Should we repeal the amendment or should we not? That's incredibly simplistic when the issue is not simplistic. And I'm going to tell you where I am on it in a minute. And I'll tell you what I would vote. I'll tell you now the way I would vote, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I would vote no on Friday. I would vote no, not to repeal the 8th Amendment. And I'll tell you why in a minute. And some of my female listeners now might be annoyed by that, but I'm going to explain why in a minute. They're trying to solve this very complicated, multifaceted issue with a simple question. And that's ridiculous. The question isn't broad enough to cover the complexities of it. And I'll tell you why I think that in a minute. John McGurk was excellent there with Burley. And Burley, to her credit today, she's based in Dublin, has been very good in the way she's conducted the interviews with the yes and the no side, has kept her own opinions out of it, and has treated both sides with courtesy and asked them some good questions. Maybe there's hope for Kay yet. Now, Siobhan Donoghue went to Liverpool for a termination in 2012. Again, she found out at 10 weeks, I think, or 11 weeks, that her baby TJ, her boy, the top of his head never formed. The skull just wasn't there. Again, the brain was absent. A terrible thing for a mother, for the father, for the family to learn. She's a yes campaigner. She wants to repeal the 8th Amendment, and she wants terminations to be possible in Ireland. She's a Yes campaigner. And here she is with Kay Burley, who asks an intelligent question after hearing about the sound, you could argue, sound reasons why Siobhan wanted to terminate. Kay Burley asked her a pretty intelligent question.
Siobhan, do you accept that your TJ and your circumstance is what's known as a hard case, as I've come to discover here in Ireland? Many other babies, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of other babies, will lose their lives in order for cases like yours so that you can abort your baby.
There has been a lot of talk lately about, the hard cases, the cases of fetal anomaly, the cases of rape and incest. And there have been so many stories told, and they're not all the so-called hard cases. There have been many people who have come forward and told their stories, and often have to tell them anonymously because they don't feel able to share their stories. People who have maybe 4 other children. Maybe they are the only breadwinner in the house. Maybe they have circumstances where they just cannot support or cannot have another child, or they're not ready to have another child. In my mind, those cases are as deserving of the care and compassion as people feel for the hard cases. I don't think, I think it is maybe easier for people to, when they start thinking about this topic, to maybe feel that we should deserve to be looked after. But in my mind, anybody who is facing a situation where their pregnancy has become a crisis for whatever reason deserves the care and compassion, and they should be able to access that in our country.
Right, so Siobhan Donoghue there. So you heard pretty thought-provoking arguments there from both sides. I'll tell you where I am on it. If I was back home, I don't vote. I don't vote in elections. I don't vote in elections because, for reasons that have been discussed too many times on this programme to repeat them again. But referenda. Yeah, I've taken an interest in referenda. I would have voted against the Lisbon Treaty in Ireland, or was it the Nice Treaty? Again, I can't remember. 2000, was it 2001? Might have been Nice. And I voted in the referendum here in June of 2016, but I wouldn't vote otherwise. I would vote no. Now, here's the caveat. How could you tell a woman who's been abused, either abused by a relative, incest, or a woman who has been raped and has become pregnant because of that? How could any society, in good conscience, any country, any government, tell that woman that you must see the pregnancy through to the full term? How can you do that? I don't think it's possible to do that. And although I've got grave reservations about abortion, or abortion on demand, or abortion for people whom are not happy with the sex of the baby, and this actually happens. People decide, well, I didn't want a girl. This actually happens in this country. It might not be widespread. I'm not going to lie or exaggerate and say it's happening all the time, but it does happen. To me, that's grievously wrong, to terminate a pregnancy because the child isn't a boy or a girl, because you wanted the opposite sex. I think it's grievously wrong if you find out that the child has Down syndrome and you decide to terminate. I would privately find that terribly wrong, terribly sad, and I'd be uncomfortable with it. I wouldn't be running after that woman on the street and calling her a murderer or a murderess or shouting at her. But if my counsel was sought, if my opinion was invited, I would say, I think that's terribly wrong. Why would you do that? That's my opinion. I used to chair these debates on radio back home, and we had all sorts of discussions about when is the baby, is the embryo, is the fetus, when is the baby conscious and aware? When is it human? When is it alive? When is it, let's just use that word, conscious. And there are 1,000 opinions on that, and I don't know the answer to that. And I know there are people listening to this program with very, very strong opinions about that. I just tell the truth, I don't know. How could you say to the lady who we heard from at the very beginning, Amy Callaghan, how could you say to Amy, there's no chance the child is going to live because the brain isn't there. The skull is not there. How can anybody insist you have to see that through to full term or as far as you can get? How could you in good conscience insist that she do that? How could you deny her the rights to a termination? You see, I couldn't deny her the rights to a termination. And this is why I have a huge problem with this referendum, because the question is just a black and white question. It isn't broad. It's not broad enough to possibly encompass all the complexities of this. Abortion's on demand. I know there are people listening to this program who will tell me now that this is part of an agenda. And I agree with them. I don't deny it. I don't want to see abortions on demand. Because that only ends up with, that just creeps and creeps and creeps and creeps. And then you go from 12 weeks to 16 weeks to 24 weeks. And then before you know it, people will introduce laws where it's okay to have abortions after 6 months or 8 months. It's terrible. And I understand why people think about that. But, and like I said, I don't want to be repeating myself, but like I said, I don't want to see people decide, oh, well, I'm not happy that I wanted a girl, so I'm going to abort. That's terrible. But could you honestly, no matter how pro-life you think you are, could you honestly stand in front of a woman who's been raped, even if it's not the most common case, even if it's one of these so-called hard cases, how could you say to her, you've got to carry the pregnancy through? You see? So it's complex. I would vote no on Friday because I agree with those who say that what this is opening things up to is abortion on demand, with no real discussion of the many, many facets of it and the many reasons why people would want to terminate. It also doesn't cover people whom are shocked by the fact they've become pregnant, are not able for it. At least they don't think they're able for it. You know, you have women who think, geez, I've got a career here. I don't want a child. I didn't want a child. I don't want a child. And they might go ahead and have a termination. But with, I don't mean with counselling, but with access to other services, with access to help and to support, might decide, do you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And then might find out that when they deliver their boy or girl, it changes their life. And it's the most wonderful thing that ever happened to them. But they don't get a chance, or they haven't given themselves a chance to make that decision. They've had no support to make that decision. They just go and get the termination. So it's very hostile in Ireland. You know, most people who talk about these things are very polarised. People don't want to see that there are shades of grey. It's just black and white. If you have a termination, you're a baby murderer. If you're against it, you're anti-women, you're misogynistic. It's bollocks. It's much more complicated than that. I don't want people to be getting abortions for no reason. Or just because, I just don't want to have the baby. Or, well, I wanted a boy. Or, I was told the baby is Down syndrome, so I don't want it. I don't agree with that. But if somebody is raped and they don't want to see it through, I'm not going to argue with that woman. If somebody has been abused by her father or an older brother, has become pregnant, can't countenance the idea of carrying the child to term, I can't argue with that either. I'm very interested in your opinion. Tweet at Richie Allen Show, that's at Richie Allen Show, with your thoughts on this pretty complicated issue. Moinga tweets, I also feel the same way about abortion. Then again, it's the woman's decision at the end of the day. Now, Moinga, a lot of blokes would disagree with that. A lot of blokes whom are in or were in a partnership, even if it isn't a marriage, but were cohabiting with a woman, love that woman, they shared their life together, they would say, well, hang on a second, surely I get a say in it. That child is also part of me, even if I'm not carrying it. So they would say, look, I disagree with that. I don't know. I hope I have all this ahead of me in the future. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens on Friday. As it stands, those who wish to repeal the 8th Amendment and to make abortion legal in Ireland It looks like they're going to win the day because the polls are showing at the moment that they have a lead, which might be insurmountable. 55-45, depending on which polls you read. Some say 60-40, some say 53-47. Now look, it can't be 53-47, it can't be 60-40 because you've got undecideds as well, but that's what they're projecting for Friday. But those of you who did email me, and particularly a woman called Dorothy, I don't know where you got this idea that I'm just pro-abortion, that, you know, people should just go and have I'm not. I've never said that. My point of view has always been the one I just expressed. It's complex, it's complicated. You know, it isn't black and white. There are shades of grey. There are reasons why it might be best for a woman not to see out the term. But none of that is taken into account in this referendum. And McGurk, the communications director, was absolutely brilliant. Speaking to Kay Burley, he acknowledged that if the referendum was about these specific cases, the no side would lose because it's common sense, right?